Thanks for joining us today, Paul. Tell us why you and your wife Nancy decided to become a billet family.
Well, Nancy was working in the high school in Swift Current at that time and was working with some of the Swift Current Bronco players and helping them with some of their courses and some of their studies. And as she got to know these young men, she realized that being a billet parent was a big part of their junior hockey life. They're away from their family, they're away from their parents, and so they need a support network, and being a billet parent is part of that, and she wanted to do that. And of course, it took a little bit more for me to be convinced, but after we had our first billet, then I was hooked as well.
Tell me about when you met Parker and Tyler.
Well, it's a bit of a funny story. Tyler came first. Our first billet last fall, in the fall of 17, was traded, and so he left, and Tyler arrived in November. And we hit it off pretty good with Tyler. And he'd been with us for a few weeks when they were looking for a second spot for this young man, goalie from Alberta that was coming. And could we take him for the weekend? Well, first question was, Tyler, what do you think? And he said, yeah, I know this guy, he's really good. So they were friends already, and that really helped a lot. And Parker came for the weekend and then stayed for about 3 weeks till Christmas. And then after Christmas, there was the possibility of another spot for him, and we asked him if he wanted to move. And before I could finish the question, he said, no, I want to stay.
Wow. And
so that's when we realized that because they got along and we got along very well with them and began to connect with them, he wanted to stay, even though he had a much smaller room and maybe not as much privacy as Tyler did in his room. No, Parker still wanted to stay. So that was a sign to us that we were connecting together.
And you describe a really close connection that you had with Parker.
He was so bright. Academically, he had a lot of interests. I thought maybe in the sciences or something, because he was so bright. And actually, he was interested in business. Anyway, we had many conversations at the dinner table and just hanging out together. We played some pool together. We did some family things together. And he and I connected over just all kinds of weird topics, history and social sciences and just a whole bunch of things that he was interested in, the academic side of things and figuring things out. And so, yeah, as Nancy, my wife, says, Parker and I connected very well, and it was a special relationship.
I don't want you to have to go back to that day, but I want you to reflect on what it's like to be standing here 1 year later, after the bus crash, after losing Parker. What is it like to be standing here knowing that Parker's gone and that connection is gone? It's
like you lose your own child, but it's not, I mean, it can't be, because he wasn't our child, but we had very strong emotions, and I had very strong grief after the accident. We were excited to see Tyler and his recovery and his successes in coming back, but it was also tough to go through the grief. And really, if it hadn't been for my faith, I'm not sure how I would have handled it. I know from talking to people that they've noticed a difference in the way I deal with my grief than the way they do. And so I think my faith has been a big help to me in that. And there are days when I think I'm over it. You know, I've said that when I can smile and laugh when I think about Parker and not tear up, then I know that the healing is almost done. And I'm close, but then days like this, it kind of brings back all those memories, and you still have an emotional reaction. So we've talked about it in our grief ministry at church, that it's a journey, and everybody progresses along that journey at a different rate and in a different way. and there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And that's been really helpful to me, and it's been helpful as we've tried to encourage our friends, other billet families, and the player families, as we've tried to be an encouragement and support for them. It's been a big help to us to realize that we are grieving together.
I have to ask about forgiveness, because that's something that you stated in your victim impact statement, that you forgive the truck driver. Why?
Well, it's not a feeling. It's a command from Jesus to forgive. And that was hard to explain to people, but you know, when I said forgiveness is hard, it is, because you don't feel like forgiving, but we're commanded to do it. Jesus forgave me. So, and I'm grateful for that. So grateful for that. I want to forgive, and I choose to forgive, but I don't know that everybody can understand that, aside from people of faith who, may understand that that's what God wants us to do.